what I want to do is show you how I would approach creating my icon in Illustrator. I've done my sketches and I've decided on the icon I want to do, and that's going to be the Viking helmet. And I've got a sketch that should give me a pretty good idea of what I want to do. What it is a common practice in Illustrator is to bring a sketch or a photograph or some sort of reference image into the program and use it as a reference or use it to draw over or to trace over, things like that. I want to show you how to do that. So I've saved my sketch. I've maybe taken a picture of it with a phone and saved it to my folder on my computer. In my case, I drew it on an iPad and saved it to my computer. But however I get my image into the computer, I save it into a folder. In Illustrator, I go to the File menu and go to Place. It will let me navigate to the particular folder I've saved it in. Should be in Graphic Design 1 and in Project 3. There's my sketch. So I've got a couple different things I was thinking about doing. I will now, with that file selected, hit Place. You'll see it show up as an icon. What I want to do is I want to click and drag, and it will drag it out as big as I place it there. Okay, so I just want to get that on the middle of the page, and we can change placement later. So I've put it on the page. If I go to my layers palette, you can see that it's on this bottom layer here, the main layer. So what I've got it in place. I want to, because I'll be drawing and be clicking a lot, I don't want to accidentally click it and move it while I'm drawing, so I will lock that layer. Now I can't accidentally click on it and move it. And then I'll create a new layer down here at the bottom of the layer palette on top, and again it's highlighted in blue, so that's the one I'm going to be working on. And I'm going to zoom up. First thing I want to do is look at this icon and figure out what its shapes are. There are a lot of triangle looking things here, so if I really flatten out these edges here, what I've got is a triangle that goes from here to here, here, so that's 3 points. But look at the horns, kind of thinking about the project 1, I can, with some curved lines, I've got a point, and a point, so that's 3 points. That means that's a triangle. If I look here at kind of where the horns attach, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a 4-point rectangle, same here, and across the bottom it's 1, 2, 3, and a 4-point rectangle. Okay, and so that's, with your icons, break them down into simple shapes to get started on, and that will help. Try to think about the simplest shapes that make up your icon, and it makes it a little less daunting and a little easier to to work with. Now in Illustrator, I've got, under the rectangle tool, I can select the polygon tool, and on a Mac, if I hold down the Option key and click, it lets me select a polygon with a certain number of sides. So I'm going to pick a 3-sided polygon. That's going to give me a triangle, and hit OK. And again, that's Option left click on a Mac, and I think that's Control click on a Windows PC. You'll have to kind of try that out. Hit OK, and so there's my triangle, and my colors are white and black by default. What I want to do is make that something that I can kind of see through this image. So with that triangle selected, I'm going to go up here and make it no fill and give it a stroke color that contrasts with the sketch pretty good bit. And I'm going to make that stroke bigger so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So now what I'll do is I'll get my selection tool, grab this corner and hold down Shift, and that's going to scale it proportionally. It doesn't stretch. Again, if I take Shift off, I get, I can stretch it and squash it and all that. But if I hold Shift, it keeps it as a triangle. So then I can click it and get it in place here. And again, I'm using my sketch as kind of a road map. I'm just trying to think about that. So I've got the width here, and I can grab the sides and get the width. and then it's a little tall, so I can bring that point down to the top of that. So now I've got this triangle. What I need to do is, I know the corners or the sides of the helmet are rounded. So the way I can do that is select my shape. And if I get the pen tool here and click on that side, see how the icon under the arrow changes to that little curved arc there? That will let me just click and put that right in place. And again, that's the pen tool selected. If I hover over the line, I see a little plus sign. If I hold down the Option key on the Mac, click and drag, it will let me make that a curved line. And then I can do the same down at the bottom. And I'm trying to hit the middle of these lines so it stays pretty symmetrical. So now I've got that main shape drawn. Now what I want to do is I want to draw out the horns. Now I could draw another triangle if I wanted to, but just as quickly I can get the pen tool and put a point here, a point at the top, and then hover over the first point. You'll see that icon change to a little circle by the pen. If I click, that makes a complete shape. So now I've got another triangle. I'm still using the pen tool. If I hold down the Option key and hover over a line, I can drag that out and then do the same here on this one. Now I've got that horn. And then if I zoom up, I can go in, and again, this we decided that was a rectangle. I could draw a rectangle out with this, or just as quickly I can use my pen tool. There's a point here. Now I'm going to put it a little bit larger than it is. Okay, so it's going to overlap on the helmet a little bit, and I'll show you why that is in a second. But I'm going to draw my 4 points out, and I might just give this a different color. So if I select it with my selection tool, just so I can tell the difference between it and, say, the other, and go back to my pen tool, hover over it, and I can round that a little bit, and I can round that some. Maybe those guys there a little. Okay, so now I've got most of my helmet done. I still need this band across the bottom, and I need this horn. So what I'll do is I'll do this band here first, and this time I'm going to get a rectangle, and I'm just going to drag it, and it overlaps the bottom of the helmet a little bit. So I'm going to draw that out and try to just position that the way I want it. Then I'm going to move in this top corner here a little bit. If I hold down Shift, I can drag that and it will snap. So I'm going to bring that in a little bit and do the same over here. That's the direct selection tool, clicking on a point. Okay. I'll go back to my pen tool and I'll click and drag here. Oh, it didn't switch there, so I need to check that and hold down the correct key, and that's the Option key on the Mac. And I'm going to round that because it follows the contour of the helmet, so that's going to be a little rounded too. Okay. Now, because I want you to start off with black and white on this, what you can do is you can go in and select. So if you click and drag outside your object, you can select all of them at once and click up here and assign black to all of those. We want to maybe take the color off that stroke to see where we've started and take the stroke off. If I deselect, I've got a fairly simple shape, but I'm missing a horn. So what I want to do is if I hold direct or the selection tool down and shift, click on those two shapes, what I can do is I can go to copy and go to paste. It creates another copy. I can drag it here off to the side. I can go to Object up at the top. With those two shapes selected, I can go to the Object, and I can go to Transform, and I can set it to Reflect. You'll get a pop-up box here, and if I hit Preview, it shows me what I'm actually doing. So if I reflect it vertically and hit OK, now I've got an exact copy of this facing in the right direction, and I can just make sure it's lined up and put it right there. And it's a little bit off with my sketch, but that's fine. Again, that sketch is just kind of a road map. All right. So now what I can do is I've got my shape. I want to turn that sketch off and see what I've got. So I can kind of align that a little bit more now. And there we go. So now that's a very simple version of our icon. We want a little more detail than that, though. Okay, we want to start thinking about how can we define that a little bit better. One way we can do that is to give some of those sections outlines. So we want to separate it a little bit. So let's say we separate it so that we see the horns a little more. One way I can do that is to select this piece here, give it a white outline, and because that's basically the same thing, I would do the same to that. And that creates some separation between those shapes. And I could do it down here at the brim too. So it's defined that shape a little bit more, but there's something we want to watch here. Okay, so where this shape overlaps that shape, and we've got that white outline, it creates this odd negative space here. Okay, what I want to do is I want that to be behind this shape. So a couple ways I can do that. I could move the horn, select it in the shape, and move it to the back. They're both doing that on both sides, so I could select those and shift-click to select them. Go to Object, Object Arrange, Send to Back. That sends them to the very back. Okay, so now we've cleaned that up a little bit. Now, I don't mind that negative space up here. It gives it kind of a nice graphic effect right there, so that's fine for that. Maybe something I want to do, though, is define this a little more. And instead of being a silhouette, what I can do is I want those horns to have a black outline and a white interior. So I will select it. I'll select both of them, actually, by shift-clicking, and go to the color, and go to white for the fill, and black for the stroke, and maybe I'll make that stroke a little bit bigger. Okay. And then once I get working on it, maybe I don't like this gap here. That's, again, maybe I want that wider and so it can be more graphic, right? So maybe we'll increase that size. Now it starts to create a little bit of a separation underneath the helmet, which I'm fine with that. That's a little more subtle, right? Again, this is you kind of taking the time to play around and seeing what works. But just that little bit of separation there is kind of nice. So maybe I'll stick with that. Now the other thing is this is a metal helmet, right? And so I know that that's going to have some reflectivity. So maybe I want to create a reflection. Now if I look in my sketch, I've sketched out an idea for where some reflections might be. So here's one here. Here's one here. Now what I can do is I can just kind of eyeball those, or if I want to, I can again select the helmet and just temporarily flip the color. So right now it's got a solid fill and no outline. If I go down here on my tool palette where it's got a fill of solid and a stroke of nothing, if I swap that, you'll see that that's what it does to this sketch. Now it's a little hard to see because that sketch is dark gray and the outline is black. A way I can fix that is if I double click on the layer with the sketch right here on this icon, it gives me the option to dim the image below. And so I can make it 50% of its intensity. So that's a lot lighter and I can see through that better. Or I can double click and I can make it 20%. And it's kind of even easier to work with now. Okay. That lets me see those reflections I planned out. And then what I can do is with my pen tool, I can go in back to my layer 2. I can look at that. And again, here's a point that starts. There's where a point ends. There's a point there. Here, 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 and back here. Now I've drawn this really straight line shape, but I know I can go in and bend that to fit. That's that. I can shape that a little bit. And I don't necessarily have to stick completely with my sketch. Just kind of play around and take some time and figure out what you want to do exactly. And then maybe I want this other highlight here. And again, I'm looking at my simple shapes and trying to think about how they actually are formed. Again, where things change direction. So I'll click here. With that hovered over and with the Option key down, and I'll drag that into place. Drag that, and I might move this point with my selection tool, direct selection tool. I'll go in and click that. And I'll reposition that a little. Back to my pen tool. Now that kind of screwed things up a little bit, right? It was a little close there, so what I can do is I can go in with my direct selection tool and edit this further and get this closer to the shape I'm after. And maybe have those not overlap so much. And fix things. Okay, now right now, those do not have any fill. If I have it selected and look over here, I can see that it doesn't have a fill color, but it's got a stroke. I want it to be white against the black, so what I'll do is I can click here or double click there and I can select white and hit OK. Now you can see that's white and I can get rid of this stroke. I can select this one. Again, I can select it up here too and change that to white with no stroke. And then I can select my helmet and go back and I can swap the stroke color with the fill color. Okay, now I've given it more detail. It's overlapping this bottom part of the helmet. I can select that. Object Arrange, Bring to Front. That's now on top. And then what I want to do is now that I see this black behind it, I know I want to go in and kind of tweak some of this. So I can select there with the selection tool and I can drag that and maybe rotate it a little bit to make that a little bit neater. Same here. Maybe bring that over, rotate it, make it a little bit smaller. And then I can do the same on these parts of the helmet that hold the horns. I can go in and this time, instead of doing the straight line, I'll go in my pen tool with white selected for the fill color. I can do that up here, or I can do it down here in this block. And I will just click and drag, click, and drag, click, and do a quick little shape that way. Okay, now I can still go in and tweak that with the direct selection tool. Zoom up a little bit. I'll click here, click off, and make sure I've just got one point. Again, that one point is the one that's going to be highlighted in whatever color. your outlines are showing in, I can go in and grab this and move that. If I click down here, I see I've got a handle sticking out. Now if I pull that handle, I'd see it rounds, okay? And that's because of the way I clicked and dragged that, it made it a curved line. It didn't look like it immediately, but that's what it did. Now, when you do that, end up with a line like this, you can only adjust it so much. And if I move one side, the other side moves in the opposite direction, which can make it hard to draw certain shapes, right? I can pull this in, and that kind of does it, but what I would rather do is break that in half so I can move each side of this line here independently. So with this point selected, I can go up here to the pen tool. Below the pen tool is the anchor point tool. With that selected, I can grab one side of that, and now I can change that, which then I can go back with the direct selection tool, grab the other side, and change that. Okay, so that's just another thing with the pen tool you'll want to learn. Then I can go in up here and maybe add a shadow. Oops, got the wrong tool. I want to grab just the pen tool, so click here, get the pen tool again, click, and kind of think about how a shadow might follow that form a little bit. Here. And I will give that a fill of black. Oops. Let's click off here and select it again, and up here I can give it a fill of black. And I don't like the shape. It's weird and thins out right here, so what I can do is I can go in and just tweak and grab points and move them and edit them as much as I need to. And sometimes you got to zoom in really close to grab the point in just the right spot there. It can be a little tricky at times to do that. But this is where really learning how to use the pen tool is going to allow you to do a lot of stuff in Illustrator. So again, take time to really understand how the pen tool works and gain some mastery of it. Okay, so that's still a little bit off. So I can continue to work on that and tweak that, but I don't want to make y'all watch me do that. And then I can go in and copy it, paste it. With it selected on the copy, I can go to transform, rotate, or reflect, and make sure previewed and reflected vertically and hit OK, and there it is. Then I can just position that in place. And so in the end, I've got my very simple high contrast icon that's fairly effective. You know, we know the shape of a Viking helmet, and I can look at that at a glance and know that's a Viking helmet. And it's not just some solid block of color. It's got some contrast that helps to define the shape a little bit further, but it's not super detailed. Okay? Now, what you can do is, and again, for this assignment, I just want to do a fairly simple high contrast black and white icon of your choosing. But I want you to think about the detail and think about what makes an icon effective, is that the viewer should be able to, you know, define what it is at a glance. But something you can think about for the future is something like this is very simple, but we can take all of these same shapes and make them more complex. So let's see if I can find that here. Again, same idea. Starts with the same sketch, basically the same number of shapes, the two shapes for each horn, this shape and the shape here. And if I view these as an outline, you can see that they're mostly all the same. These top three are all exactly the same shapes. This one has a different line set up than this one does, so I played around with lines here to do that. And this one has some gradients added. This one I've added a few shapes to help create more detail. This one I've used textures in those shapes to create something different. This I've layered more shapes on top. This I've layered shapes and used textures. And these are all things we'll get into further, the further we get through the semester, is kind of how to kind of build on top of things. The important thing is that you can do this and get really good, clean, simple images to start with, using a really efficient number of shapes, and then you can take those and build on those to get something more like this or this. You can get a lot of different looks with Illustrator, but really it takes a mastery of just using the basic tools and an understanding of creating these shapes that work from the start. Like a bad drawing of a Viking helmet, no matter how many textures or techniques you put on it, is still a bad drawing. So really work on the fundamentals for this project, and think about how you can use it in the future, but really work on nailing your ability to use the tools and the way you think about shapes and how shapes can be used to create these icons. All right, thanks.